When I was really little, my family went on a picnic and my cousin got done eating early and decided to take a stick and to start whacking a bunch of trees. Well, he hit the wrong tree, and a bee's nest came crashing down, and bees were everywhere. There was more than just my family at this picnic, by the way. There were people everywhere running for their lives. That was the first time that I ever got stung by a swarm of bees. The second time I got stung by a swarm of bees was when I posted my video about Stadia not being great. Not again, okay.
You should really do some research next time.
You got that on
I don't know what this video is talking about.
Okay, can we just agree to disagree? Is that no?
We can disagree about you sucking.
Little YouTube tip, when you have more comments than likes on a video, then you know you struck a nerve. I'll be completely honest here. A lot of you guys had some really great points that I hadn't really considered, and some things that when I was doing my research, I didn't come across. Like when you pointed out that I said megabyte instead of megabit. Sorry, I'm a nerd, but I always confuse those two. Oh, and you had great points about Stadia as well, I guess. In this video, I kind of want to expand on my last video about Stadia, and I want to bring light to some of the ideas that y'all brought to me that I thought were really great, and I want to kind of have a conversation about Stadia, present the good and the bad, why you should be excited about Stadia, and why you maybe don't want to be so excited about Stadia. Now, I won't say that you guys completely swayed me on Stadia, but, well, I'll get to that. I'll end this video on where I stand about Stadia. First off, one thing that I didn't really talk much about in my video was that the technology behind Stadia is kind of amazing. The fact that if I have good internet, I can play all of their games without any powerful hardware is kind of amazing. One of the biggest criticisms I got about my video was about Cyberpunk, and rightly so. Cyberpunk had released, I think, about a week before my video came out, and I had done all of my research prior to Cyberpunk coming out, and I forgot to look into Cyberpunk before posting my video like an idiot. The truth was, Stadia was one of the best places to play Cyberpunk. On PS4 and Xbox One, people were nearly having an unplayable experience trying to play it on their consoles. Now, you still ran into bugs if you use Stadia, because all versions of Cyberpunk has bugs, but Stadia did an awesome job at making the experience as good as they could, and I think it was a huge win for Stadia. It kind of showed the power of cloud technology and how it might actually be a stable platform for the future. As huge AAA games launch on Stadia as well as other platforms, and people start noticing a pattern of the experience on Stadia being better, then I would say the future is actually pretty bright for Stadia. Now, one of my big criticisms of Stadia is I feel like they needed to take a risk and give away a major game or just do something to get people interested and excited about Stadia. And many of you rightly pointed out that, dude, if you bought Cyberpunk, then you get Stadia Premiere for free, which I had heard that. And I'll be honest, I forgot what Stadia Premiere was. I forgot that was what I had purchased a year prior. It's been a while since I've looked into that. Now that's on me, and that's my bad. But I will note that Stadia Premiere, if you don't know, includes a controller and a Chromecast Ultra. So basically, if you bought the game, you got all the hardware you needed to play Cyberpunk on your TV. Now I want to give Stadia credit for that because that was a great deal, and $60, you have everything you need to play Cyberpunk and many, many more games. If Sony threw in a PlayStation 5 and a controller when you bought Cyberpunk, then I think the world might have ended based on how many people would have gotten into fights over that deal. But that isn't exactly what I was talking about, and it actually points out one of the criticisms I have of Stadia. Giving away a controller and a Chromecast is cool, but I don't understand why Stadia keeps pushing this bundle on people. For me, and maybe it's just me, I think the most exciting thing about cloud gaming is that in theory, you can play on any device that you own with basically any hardware you own, a controller, mouse, keyboard, whatever, and you can play your game. And to continue to push the Chromecast Ultra and Stadia on people as if that's going to get them to get in the door, just kind of misses the whole advantage of cloud gaming. What I think would have really got people excited is if they gave away a major AAA game. Like, maybe if they gave away Cyberpunk for you trying Stadia. Now call me crazy, but wouldn't that have been way more exciting than getting this hardware that you shouldn't really need anyway? Okay, I'll admit, that's probably asking for too much, but maybe instead of giving away Cyberpunk, maybe like on the first week of the Cyberpunk's release, maybe it's half price, maybe 20 bucks off or something like that. Wouldn't that have been more interesting? Wouldn't you have rather got half off Cyberpunk than this free hardware for Stadia that, again, you don't need? To be clear, the Cyberpunk deal they did was cool and definitely a win for Stadia. But again, I just want them to get away from their dedicated hardware. They need to focus on making Stadia work on more hardware instead of pushing these very specific pieces of hardware, like Roku, Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, if they'll let you. Actually, they may not let you because they're weird about that stuff. But anyway, it should work on more things.
Now, one great point that you guys brought up is that you don't have to download games, and that actually may not seem like a big deal, but that is kind of a big deal. It is a major convenience, especially considering that some games are as large as over 100 gigabytes, and that size is not going to get smaller over time. See, I'm learning. I didn't say gigabits, I said gigabytes. Can I have a cookie? So unless you have just a massive hard drive, you can only store a portion of your game collection, at least your digital game collection, at a time. With Stadia, you don't think about this. You don't have to delete and re-download games. You have instant access to your entire Stadia game collection. Now, other streaming platforms do this too, but with Stadia, you can actually record screenshots and even video clips, and they're stored in the cloud for free. Now, it's not unlimited, but it is pretty generous. If you don't have a pro account, you can store up to 130-second clips. And if you do have a pro account, then you can store up to 500 clips. Now, I might have missed this in my research. I hope I didn't, but I'm pretty sure that's something unique to Stadia.
Also, this is something that was brand new to me because I've been using Stadia for a while. In fact, I don't think any of you guys noticed this either, because I don't think I got a single comment where anyone mentioned this. If I missed you, I'm sorry. But at the time of this video, if you're brand new to Stadia and you sign up to be a pro member, they give you, wait for it, over 25 games to start your Stadia collection with. That's very generous. Now, I do want to put one caveat into that. If you stop paying the $10 a month for Stadia Pro, you do lose access to those games, so I don't want to miss that. But if you ever come back to Stadia Pro later after canceling it, those games come back as well, and they're basically yours as long as you're willing to pay the monthly fee, and you get more and more free games every month. Sometimes I've got as many as 10 free games. I also want to note that Stadia does have sales, and sometimes they're actually pretty good sales. I'm gonna look right now. Right now, you can get Assassin's Creed Origins Deluxe Edition for 14 bucks. They have Far Cry New Dawn, $15. Red Dead Redemption, 40 bucks. What else do they have? They have Uno Ultimate Edition. Instead of $14.99, you pay $5.99. Pretty dope. To be fair, you do typically have to be a pro member to get these sales, but there are a couple that don't require it. Enter the Gungeon is $3 off. The Red Dead Redemption one I mentioned, that's 40 bucks. That one does not require a pro membership either, but a lot of them do.
Speaking of games, that was actually my biggest criticism of Stadia. That was the real reason why I felt like I couldn't commit to Stadia as a platform exclusively, and many of you disagreed with my opinion there. And I'm gonna pull back a little bit on that. If I'm being completely honest, I did not give Stadia enough credit for the library that they've built over the past year. They do truly have a variety of quality games ready for you to play. And many of you commented that they had set a goal for 2020 to launch, I forget the exact number, but over 100 games on the Stadia platform. And they did meet that goal, and that's great. And many of you pointed out to me, and I did not know this, that Stadia has over 400 games currently in development for the platform right now. Now, it's unclear when all those games are going to come out, but it's great that their collection is growing, and signs point that it's going to keep growing more and more.
Okay, now that I tooted the Stadia horn, let's figure out how their game collection stacks up to some of the competition. Let's figure out how many popular third-party games end up on Stadia. I did find a video on YouTube where someone said that 9 of the top 100 games on Metacritic were on Stadia. So just 9 of 100, less than 10%. Yikes. So I looked at that Metacritic list and I noticed some things. Like some of the games on that list were listed multiple times. Like Tony Hawk Pro Skater were listed on the top 100 list 3 times because they're on multiple platforms. Also, a lot of the games on that list are exclusives, and I don't think it's really fair to blame Stadia for not being able to convince Nintendo to make Breath of the Wild 2 work on Stadia. It's just not gonna happen. So not to throw shade at that other YouTuber, but that's not really a fair list. So I found a different list, and I think this gives you a better picture of where Stadia sits in terms of third-party developer support. Now, I'll fully admit that this is not a perfect list, but I think it's a pretty good one. This is the Steam Top 100 list. I like this list because Steam mostly, like 99.9% of the games on their platform are third-party games, meaning that if the developer of those games gave the green light, they could in theory also be on Stadia. Also, what's neat about this list is they actually kind of segmented their top 100 list. They have the platinum games, the ones that a lot of people played, and then gold, silver, and bronze. Without further ado, how many of these games are currently on Stadia? Well, we'll go tier by tier. In the platinum tier, Steam lists 12 games. Now, I'm gonna eliminate 2 of those games. One is Dota and the other one is CSGO. Because as far as I can tell, these are basically exclusive to Steam. So I don't think it's fair to hold that against Stadia. So of the remaining 10, how many of them are on Stadia? Drum roll, please. Pro sound effect there. 5 games. So to give you guys the full picture here of the most popular games on Steam, there is about a 50-50 chance whether or not those games got also ported over to Stadia. To be honest, that's actually better than I thought. For the gold tier, Steam also has 12 games, and of those, Stadia has, drumroll please, 4 games. So 33% of the games. And as I went down the tiers, the chances of them being on Stadia got lower and lower. Silver had 16 games on Steam, only 1 of those were on Stadia, and Bronze was the remaining 58 games, and Stadia had 11 of those. So after removing a couple of games that were either exclusives or they just weren't games, I had 96 games, and of the entire Steam most popular catalog, Stadia had 21 games. So that kind of puts you at about, 20%. 20% of the most popular games on Steam were also on Stadia. But the interesting thing though was if the game was more popular, it had a higher chance of making it on Stadia.
When I criticized Stadia for its game library, this was kind of what I was getting at. If you see a game that you really want to play at E3 or online with a cool trailer, there's a real good chance you're not going to be able to play it on Stadia, at least how things stand today. Hopefully it'll improve over time. For me, as it stands today, that makes it a platform that I just cannot fully commit to just yet because, again, most games don't work on it.
And you know what? That might actually be okay for a lot of you. In fact, a lot of you guys said that you're not interested in fully committing to Stadia. You supplement it with your Xbox or your Switch or whatever. Like, you like using Stadia sometimes, but you have some other platforms you like just as much. And that's really cool. But some of you guys told me that once you tried Stadia, you're never going back to any other platform and you're going to be using Stadia exclusively. If that's you, I'm genuinely curious how you feel maybe in the next year, maybe at the end of the year. Send me a comment, just let me know. Do you still feel that way? Do you feel like it's still a platform that gives you enough good games to where you feel like it's worthy of you just using it all by itself? Now, I didn't mention this in my last video, but if you haven't heard, Stadia uses Linux, which is a free open source operating system. It's kind of the backbone of Stadia. Now, on paper, I don't hate this idea. In fact, I kind of like the fact that more games are working on Linux. I want more games to be developed for more platforms. I don't think it makes sense to exclude different things. And I think Stadia supporting Linux means more games are gonna work on Linux. And I have a theory that the bright side of them doing this gave Google more control of what they could do with Stadia, and it allows them to do some really cool things with the game technology they're developing. But the downside is a lot of games don't work on Linux, and it's kind of up to the developers to make that effort to port it over to Linux and over to Stadia. And that's my theory on why you're not seeing more games work on Stadia. If you look at GeForce Now, which is a competing streaming platform, on their website, they list over 800 games that support their platform. I've even seen some people online say that they actually support over 2,000 games. I don't know if that's true, but in any case, it's a ton more games than Stadia supports. And I have to imagine that it's probably because GeForce Now uses Windows. I'm not sure if they do, but I'm pretty sure they do. And the majority of games these days are designed to work on Windows. And that sort of brings me to the next thing many of you mentioned. One of the great things that Stadia has been doing is they're trying to be innovative and add several really cool features that again, I didn't mention in my previous video. Now, I wasn't oblivious to these features, but I feel like each of them have like kind of an asterisk to them. There's kind of always a catch of some sort. I'll explain what I mean. For example, you can stream straight to YouTube from Stadia without any other hardware, which is pretty cool. There's also a feature called crowd play, where people can watch you stream things and they can vote on doing different things to your game and change your gaming experience in some way. And there's also a feature called save state, where basically someone can give you their exact progress to the game and you can kind of pick up where they left off. All these are really neat, but let me get to the asterisk thing that I mentioned earlier. For streaming, you can only stream to YouTube, not Twitch or Facebook Gaming or any other streaming platform. I get it, Google owns both YouTube and Stadia, but Twitch is really popular for game streaming, and it'd be cool if they would include it. And save state and crowd play just don't work on most games. It's just like a handful. In fact, I was trying to find a list and it was kind of tough to find. If any of you guys know what games these features worked on, let me know below, because I think it's just like literally less than 5. But I will note, before I get chastised for not doing my research, that Hitman 3, which just came out, uses save state. And that's really cool that a brand new cutting edge game has that feature built in. But again, that's still not the majority of games. That and Crea are the only 2 games I'm aware of that uses save state. If there's another one, again, let me know in the comments. Now, some of you defended Stadia and called out the individual game developers for not working harder to make their ports to Stadia be better. And I'm not so sure it's fair to totally let Google off the hook here. I'm speculating, I'll just tell you right now, but if Google's reason for using Linux as Stadia's backbone was so they can have more control and introduce all these cool features, and most devs aren't using these features and some games run at 1080p 30 frames per second because they're hard to port, it just kind of seems like Linux might have been a bad call here. Now, I'm not saying that it was a bad call, I'm saying it might have been. I think that time will tell on that one, and I have a feeling that either Linux is going to be one of Stadia's greatest moves, or it's going to be one that they live to regret. And at this point, it's probably too late for them to switch. Conclusion time. I hope that you guys know that I don't hate Stadia, and honestly, I get a lot of your points, and I think Stadia does deserve praise for the progress that they've achieved. I just gotta be objective. I gotta look at the pros and the cons, because I think if you don't do that and you ignore the pros and the cons, then you're just being a fanboy, whether you're being a fanboy of PlayStation by just focusing on the cons, or you're being a fanboy of Stadia by just focusing on the pros. And well, at this point, I think I'm just kind of mixed on the future of Stadia. I hope it's bright, and I hope it becomes my gaming platform of choice. That's honestly what I was hoping that it would be. I hope you know that I don't hate Stadia, and I'm not completely done with it. In fact, since the last video I posted, I bought 2 games, Jedi Fallen Order and Doom, because they had great sales on Stadia. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree with me, or am I still off base? Let me know below. I might regret that. Thank you so much for watching. My channel is all about finding just awesome tech out there and products that typically aren't too pricey. And if you're into that sort of thing, please subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss my future videos. Thanks again. I'm Titus, by the way, and I'll see you next time.